Put $5 on pump 6. I will cover it. Nia Carter said the words before she could talk herself out of them. The $5 bill lay beneath her fingertips on the scratched counter, soft from being folded too many times, while rain hammered the metal roof above the gas pumps and turned the parking lot into a black mirror of red taillights and white fluorescent signs. The stranger standing across from her looked down at the money, then back at Nia. He was a white man in his mid-50s, tall, gray-haired, and soaked along the shoulders of a plain navy jacket. Nothing about him looked remarkable. His phone screen was dark, his wallet was missing, and the fuel gauge of the older sedan parked beside pump 6 had apparently been resting on empty for the last mile. "Miss, you do not have to do that," he said. Nia glanced toward the clock above the cigarette display. 11:43 at night. Her shift ended in 17 minutes. The last bus she could catch without waiting another hour would arrive shortly after midnight. She looked back at the man. $5 should get you far enough to reach the next open place with a phone charger. Before he could answer, Diane Mercer stepped out of the small office behind the counter. Her eyes moved from the stranger to the bill beneath Nia's hand. "What is going on?" she asked. The stranger answered politely. "I left my wallet at a restaurant about 40 miles back. My phone died, and I only need enough fuel to get somewhere I can make a call." Diane crossed her arms. "Then call roadside assistance. My phone is dead. There is a 24-hour diner 8 miles east." The man looked through the rain toward his car. "I do not think I have 8 miles left." Diane gave a short, humorless laugh. "This is a gas station, not a charity." Nia felt the muscles in her jaw tighten. She knew better than to argue with Diane during a shift. She also knew exactly what that $5 meant. Bus fare. A small lunch between jobs. Maybe both, if she was careful. She had counted the money twice during her break. Still, she slid the bill across the counter. "Pump 6, she repeated. Diane stared at her. "You are paying for him." "Yes, ma'am." "With your own money?" "Yes, ma'am." The stranger watched Nia with an expression she could not read. "Why?" he asked quietly. Nia entered the amount into the register. The machine beeped, the drawer opened, and the $5 bill disappeared beneath larger bills that belonged to people who would never know what it had cost her. Because standing outside in this weather will not charge your phone or fill your tank. For the first time, the man smiled. Not broadly, just enough to soften the tiredness in his face. "What is your name?" Diane answered before Nia could. "Her name is on the tag. Please move your vehicle when you are finished." The man looked at the small plastic badge pinned to Nia's green uniform shirt. "Nia Carter," he said, as though committing it to memory. Then he nodded once. "Thank you, Miss Carter." He walked back into the rain. Nia watched through the glass as he lifted the nozzle at pump 6. $5 did not buy much fuel anymore, but the numbers climbed slowly enough to mean movement, and sometimes movement was all a person needed. Diane waited until the stranger returned the nozzle and drove away before speaking. "That was foolish." Nia began wiping the counter. "It was my money. That is not the point." "Then what is the point?" Diane's expression hardened. "The point is that people like you cannot afford to keep rescuing strangers." Nia stopped wiping. For a second, only the rain spoke. Diane turned and walked back into the office. Nia looked through the window at the fading red taillights of the stranger's car, then down at her empty pocket. She had no idea who he was. She had no reason to believe she would ever see him again. And by morning, that $5 decision would cost her far more than she expected. At 12 o'clock, Nia clocked out, pulled on a faded gray raincoat, and checked the transit app on her phone. The last convenient bus was due in 11 minutes. She could still make it if she walked quickly. As she stepped from behind the counter, Diane appeared in the office doorway holding the nightly sales report. "Before you leave, clean the coffee station again." Nia looked toward the glass pots, lined beneath the warmers. "I cleaned it 20 minutes ago. Then it should not take long." Nia understood the message beneath the request. She hung her raincoat back on the hook and returned to the coffee station. She wiped an already clean counter, rinsed 2 empty pots, replaced a stack of paper cups, and listened to the minutes pass on the wall clock. 12:05, 12:08, 12:11. When Diane finally said, "That is fine," Nia checked her phone. The bus had already passed. She said nothing. Complaining would not bring it back. She put on her coat and stepped beneath the station awning, where the rain had softened into a steady mist. Her next bus would not arrive for almost an hour. She sat on the cold metal bench beside the building and opened her banking app. $48.16. Friday's paycheck would cover part of the electric bill at home. Her morning shift at a grocery store would cover groceries. Her weekend hours at the gas station were supposed to pay for the used biology textbook she had found online. Nia had learned to give every dollar a job before it arrived. Money for rent, money for food, money for Marcus, money for school. There was never a category called kindness. Maybe that was why the $5 bothered her less than it should have. She thought about the stranger's question. Why? The answer was more complicated than the one she had given him. 3 years earlier, when Nia was 15, her grandmother's car had broken down on Interstate 20 during a hot July afternoon. Cars passed for almost an hour before an elderly couple stopped, gave them water, and waited until help arrived. They never asked for money. They never told anyone what they had done. Her grandmother had remembered that day ever since. The world stays human because somebody decides not to keep driving, she often said. Nia had not thought of those words when she saw the stranger. Not consciously. She had simply seen someone stranded and remembered how it felt to be the person everyone passed. At 12:52, the bus finally arrived. Nia sat near the back, resting her forehead against the cool window as Atlanta's outer neighborhoods moved past in blurred reflections. By the time she reached the small apartment she shared with her grandmother and 11-year-old brother, it was almost 2 in the morning. The kitchen light was still on. Her grandmother, Evelyn Carter, sat at the table in a blue robe, sorting envelopes into careful piles. "You are late," she said. "Missed the bus." Evelyn looked at Nia's wet shoes. "Because of work?" Nia hesitated. "Sort of." She opened the refrigerator and found a plate covered with foil. Half a chicken sandwich and sliced apples. Her grandmother had saved them for her. Nia sat down and ate quietly while Evelyn studied her face. Something happened. Nia smiled. "You always say that." "Because something always happens." Nia finally told her about the stranger, the empty tank, and the $5. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When Nia finished, her grandmother looked toward the envelopes on the table. "Was that your last $5 in cash?" "Yes." "And you gave it away?" "He needed it more at that moment." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then I suppose the money did its job." From the hallway came the soft sound of bare feet. Marcus appeared wearing an oversized basketball shirt, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Did you bring cereal?" he asked. Nia closed her eyes. She had forgotten. The $5 had also been meant for breakfast cereal before her morning shift. Marcus saw her expression and shrugged. "It is okay. We still have oatmeal." Nia looked at her little brother, then at the envelopes covering the table. For the first time that night, the true weight of the $5 settled inside her. Still, when she remembered the stranger driving away safely through the rain, she did not wish she had taken it back. At 7 the next morning, after less than 5 hours of sleep, Nia was already dressed for her grocery store shift when her phone rang. Diane's name appeared on the screen. Nia answered. "Good morning." Diane did not return the greeting. "We need to discuss your schedule," she said. Nia looked at the biology textbook listing still open on her phone. Then Diane continued. "Do not plan on working this weekend." The words stayed in Nia's ear. After the call ended, "Do not plan on working this weekend." She stood beside the kitchen table in her grocery store uniform, staring at the dark phone screen while the apartment slowly woke around her. Water moved through the pipes behind the wall. A delivery truck groaned somewhere outside. In the bedroom, Marcus searched loudly for a missing sneaker. Evelyn looked up from her coffee. "How many hours?" she asked. 16. Nia answered without looking at her. 16 hours meant more than $200 before taxes. It meant the used biology textbook, the community college application fee, and enough left over to put something toward the electric bill. Evelyn folded her hands around the warm mug. Did she say why? Poor judgment. Nia gave a small, tired laugh. Apparently $5 can be very expensive. Evelyn did not smile. "You are still going to your other job?" "I cannot afford not to." Nia slipped her phone into her pocket, found Marcus's sneaker beneath the couch, and left for the grocery store before disappointment could make her late. For the next 8 hours, she stocked shelves, carried boxes from the back room, answered questions about coupons, and smiled at customers who never knew she was calculating lost wages every time she looked at the clock. At 4:30 that afternoon, she changed clothes in the employee restroom and took 2 buses toward the gas station. Diane had removed the weekend shifts, but Nia was still scheduled for Friday evening. and she needed every remaining hour. When she arrived, the sky was clear and pale orange, completely different from the storm the night before. Pump 6 stood empty beneath the canopy. Nia looked at it for half a second, then went inside. Diane was counting lottery tickets behind the counter. "You are 3 minutes early," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Your drawer is ready." Nia signed in and began her shift. For almost an hour, Diane said nothing about the phone call. Then, during a quiet moment, she placed the new schedule on the counter between them. Nia saw her name crossed out on Saturday and Sunday. "I need you to understand something," Diane said. "This business has rules. I paid with my own money. That is not the issue. You keep saying that." Diane's eyes lifted. "Watch your tone." Nia became quiet. She had learned that some people called confidence disrespect when it came from someone they had already decided should be grateful. Diane tapped the schedule. Customers see one person asking for help, then another. Soon, everyone expects special treatment. He was not asking the store for anything. "I helped him." "You encouraged dependency." Nia looked through the window at the highway beyond the pumps. Cars moved steadily in both directions. He needed enough gas to get somewhere safe. Diane leaned closer. "You are young, so I am going to give you advice. People like you need to stop trying to save everybody and start worrying about your own situation." Nia slowly turned back toward her. There it was again. "People like you." The phrase was always vague enough to deny and sharp enough to understand. "What kind of people are you talking about?" she asked. Diane's expression changed. "Do not make this into something it is not. I asked a question, and I am your manager." The front door opened, and a customer entered, ending the conversation. Nia stepped toward the register. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady. For the next several hours, she worked exactly as she always did. She cleaned the counters, restocked the coolers, and helped an elderly customer find the correct motor oil. She gave Diane no excuse to criticize her work. Near 10 o'clock, a young white employee named Tyler arrived for his shift carrying a large coffee. He looked at the schedule and frowned. "Hey, Diane, I cannot work Sunday. My friends are going to the lake." Diane barely looked up. "That is fine. I will find coverage." Nia stood beside the coffee machine, holding a stack of cups. The difference was so casual that it hurt more than if Diane had tried to hide it. Tyler smiled. "Thanks. You are the best." Nia placed the cups into their holder one by one. She thought about 16 lost hours. She thought about the textbook listing that might disappear before she could afford it. Then she looked at Pump 6 again. Empty. Ordinary. Sedan slowed near the entrance to the station. Nia noticed it because it passed once, made a turn across the road, and came back. The car stopped near the edge of the parking lot, but did not approach a pump. Its headlights went dark. Diane looked through the window. Probably somebody lost. Nia returned to wiping the counter. A few minutes later, the sedan drove away. She did not know that the person inside had just confirmed her name, her workplace, and the time of her next shift. By 11:58, the station had gone quiet again. Tyler was restocking bottled drinks in the cooler while Diane sat in the office reviewing paperwork. Nia stood behind the register and watched the minute hand move toward midnight. Her shift ended at 12:30, and she had already checked the bus schedule twice. If nothing delayed her, she could catch the 12:42 bus and reach home before 2. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked down at the community college website open on her phone. The used biology textbook she wanted was still available, but the seller had added a note saying another buyer was interested. Nia closed the page. Looking at something she could not afford would not make it cheaper. "You checking your phone on company time?" Diane's voice came from behind her. Nia put the phone away. There were no customers. There are always things to clean. Nia nodded and reached for a cloth. Diane placed a sheet of paper on the counter. "Sign this." Nia read it slowly. It was a written warning for failure to follow management expectations and exercising poor judgment during customer interactions. "This says I violated store policy." "You did." "Which policy?" Diane pointed toward the signature line. "I am not debating this again." Nia looked at the page. "I want a copy." Diane's mouth tightened. "Fine. And I want the policy number written on it." For several seconds, neither woman moved. Tyler closed the cooler door and glanced toward them before quickly returning to his work. Diane lowered her voice. "You need to learn when to stop pushing." Nia kept her own voice calm. "I am asking what rule I broke." "You created an expectation that employees can make personal financial arrangements with customers." "I gave someone $5. And now you are arguing with your manager. Nia placed the paper back on the counter without signing it. I will sign after the policy is listed. Diane stared at her, then picked up the warning and walked into the office. Nia's hands were shaking, but she kept wiping the counter. She was not trying to win a fight. She was trying to protect herself. That difference mattered, even if no one else could see it. At 12:25, Diane came out again. You can go. Nia looked at the clock. My shift ends in 5 minutes. I said you can go. Nia knew better than to ask why. She clocked out, put on her raincoat, and stepped outside. The air was cool, and the pavement still held dark patches from the previous night's storm. She walked quickly toward the bus stop, but halfway there, her phone vibrated. A transit alert filled the screen. The 12:42 bus had been canceled because of a mechanical problem. The next one would not arrive for 83 minutes. Nia stood beneath a streetlight and closed her eyes. A rideshare home would cost more than $20. She could not spend that. She checked the distance on the map. 4.7 miles. Too far after a 16-hour day between both jobs, but not impossible. She put her phone in her pocket and started walking. The highway shoulder was separated from traffic by a wide strip of grass, and Nia stayed on the safer side streets whenever possible. Houses became smaller as she moved away from the commercial district. Porch lights glowed behind curtains. Somewhere, a dog barked once and then became quiet. After 2 miles, her feet began to ache. After 3, the cold reached through the thin soles of her shoes. She thought about calling Evelyn, but her grandmother no longer drove at night unless absolutely necessary, and Nia refused to wake her over a long walk. She kept going. Near 1:30, her phone rang. Marcus, why are you awake? Nia asked. Grandma fell asleep on the couch. I heard her phone alarm. Go back to bed. Where are you? Nia looked ahead at the long road beneath yellow streetlights. Walking home. From the bus stop? She hesitated. From a different bus stop. Marcus was quiet. Is this because of the $5? Nia smiled despite herself. Everything is not because of $5. Are you sorry you gave it away? The question followed her for several steps. Nia could have said yes. Her feet hurt. Her weekend hours were gone. A textbook she needed might be sold to someone else. She was walking almost 5 miles after midnight while the stranger she helped had probably forgotten her name. But she remembered the way his shoulders had relaxed when the pump began running. No, she said. Why not? Nia looked at the empty road ahead. Because doing the right thing does not become wrong just because it costs you something. Marcus was silent for a moment. That sounds like something Grandma would say. Do not tell her. She will charge me royalties. Marcus laughed softly. Nia told him to go back to sleep and ended the call. At 1:47, she finally reached her apartment building. The kitchen light was on. Evelyn was standing at the window waiting for her. Nia opened the door, exhausted and cold, but before her grandmother could ask a question, Nia's phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from Diane. Be at the station tomorrow at 8 in the morning. The regional owner is visiting. Do not be late. Nia stared at the screen. She had less than 6 hours before she needed to leave again. She did not know that, at that same moment, several miles away, a white man in a quiet hotel suite was reading a report about the gas station, its ownership company, and a young employee named Nia Carter. At 7:15 the next morning, Nia stood in the kitchen wearing the same clean green uniform shirt she had hung over a chair only a few hours earlier. Her eyes felt heavy, and every step reminded her of the long walk home. But she moved quietly so Marcus could sleep another 30 minutes before school. Evelyn stood at the stove making oatmeal with cinnamon. Sit down and eat, she said. I have to leave in 5 minutes. Then eat in 4. Nia obeyed. She took 3 quick spoonfuls while Evelyn watched her with the patient concern of someone who knew when questions would only make exhaustion heavier. Regional owner, Evelyn said. That is what your manager wrote. Yes. Maybe they are coming to give everyone a raise. Nia smiled. You have been watching too many game shows. Evelyn placed a banana beside her. Take this. Nia slipped it into her bag and kissed her grandmother on the cheek. Outside, the morning air was cool and clear. The bus arrived 6 minutes late, but Nia reached the station at 7:54. Diane was already there, moving quickly between the office and the counter. Fresh flowers sat near the register. The coffee station had new labels. Even the front windows had been polished until they reflected the pumps like mirrors. You are cutting it close, Diane said. Nia looked at the clock. I am 6 minutes early. Diane ignored that. The regional owner may arrive at any time. Stay professional. No personal conversations with customers. No unusual decisions. Just do your job. Nia placed her bag in the employee locker. That is what I always do. Diane turned sharply. Today is not the day for attitude. Nia felt a reply rise in her throat, then let it go. She was too tired to spend energy proving she was not angry. For the next hour, the station operated normally. Commuters bought coffee, construction workers filled large pickup trucks, and parents stopped for juice and breakfast sandwiches before school. Nia worked the register with the same calm efficiency she always had. At 9:10, Tyler arrived carrying another oversized coffee. Diane greeted him warmly. Perfect timing. Can you make sure the front display looks full? Tyler nodded and disappeared into the stockroom. Nia watched him go, remembering how easily his Sunday shift had been removed from the schedule. She said nothing. At 9:30, Diane received a phone call. Her posture changed almost immediately. Yes, sir. Of course. We are ready. She ended the call and straightened her blouse. He will be here in 20 minutes. Nia continued arranging receipts. Who is the regional owner? Mr. Harold Pierce. He oversees 32 locations. Diane looked toward Nia. If he asks about your schedule, I will handle it. Why would he ask about my schedule? I said I will handle it. Nia understood then that Diane was nervous. Not because of the flowers or the polished windows. Because someone above her might ask questions. At 9:48, a white sport utility vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Diane hurried toward the door, but the man who stepped out was not the stranger from the storm. He was shorter, wearing a gray business suit and carrying a leather folder. Diane opened the door before he reached it. Mr. Pierce, welcome. Harold Pierce shook her hand, greeted the employees, and began walking through the station. He checked the coffee station, asked about sales numbers, and spoke with Tyler for less than a minute. When he reached Nia, Diane stepped closer. This is Nia. She works several evening shifts. Harold looked at the folder in his hand. Nia Carter? Yes, sir. He studied her for a moment. I was asked to speak with you privately. Diane's face tightened. About what? Harold looked at her. Privately. 10 minutes later, Nia sat across from him in the small office. Through the glass window, she could see Diane pretending to organize candy near the register while watching every movement inside. Harold opened the folder. Did you give a customer $5 for fuel 2 nights ago? Nia's stomach tightened. Yes, sir. Did you take money from the register? No, sir. It was mine. Did you ask the customer for anything in return? No, Harold leaned back. Why did you do it? Nia had answered this question twice already, but the answer had not changed. Because he was stranded. Harold nodded slowly and closed the folder. Your manager documented the incident as poor judgment. Nia looked through the office window at Diane. I know. She also removed 16 hours from your schedule. Nia turned back. Yes, sir. Harold was quiet. Would you like those hours restored? The question surprised her. I would like to be treated the same way as everyone else. Harold studied her face. Before he could respond, the sound of several vehicles entering the parking lot reached the office. Diane stopped arranging candy and looked outside. Nia followed her gaze. Hey! Black sedan pulled beside pump 6. Behind it came 2 more vehicles, quiet and polished beneath the morning sun. The door of the first car opened. The white stranger from the storm stepped out wearing a dark suit. He looked toward the station, saw Nia through the office window, and smiled. Harold Pierce stood immediately. Nia remained seated. You know him? She asked. Harold looked at her as if the question itself were impossible. Miss Carter, he said quietly. That is Charles Bennett. Nia waited for more. Harold lowered his voice. He owns Bennett Logistics. Through the glass, Charles walked toward the entrance. And his company, Harold continued, is worth several $billion. For several seconds, Nia heard nothing except the low hum of the office air conditioner. Several $billion. She looked through the glass again, expecting the man approaching the station to somehow appear different now that she knew who he was. He did not. Charles Bennett walked with the same measured steps he had taken through the rain 2 nights earlier. The only difference was the dark suit, the polished shoes, and the 2 people following several feet behind him. One carried a leather portfolio. The other held a tablet. Harold Pierce opened the office door and stepped into the store. Diane moved quickly from behind the counter. Mr. Bennett, welcome. I am Diane Mercer, the store manager. If we had known you were visiting, We would have prepared something more appropriate. Charles looked around the station. Fresh flowers near the register. Perfectly aligned coffee cups. Shelves filled to the edge. Then his eyes found Nia, standing in the office doorway. You already did, he said. Diane followed his gaze, and the confidence in her face weakened. Charles walked toward Nia and stopped a respectful distance away. Good morning, Miss Carter. Good morning, sir. You look surprised. Nia glanced at the vehicles outside. You said you forgot your wallet. I did. You did not mention the billion-dollar company. Charles smiled. It did not seem useful while my car was almost out of gas. Nia wanted to laugh, but exhaustion and confusion held the sound inside her. Charles reached into his jacket pocket and removed a crisp $5 bill. He placed it on the counter between them. I believe this belongs to you. Nia looked at the bill but did not touch it. You came all the way back for $5? No. Charles looked toward Harold, then Diane. I came back because of what the $5 revealed. The station became unusually quiet. Even Tyler had stopped moving boxes in the stockroom doorway. Charles continued. After I reached a hotel, I had my assistant locate this station. I wanted to send a thank you note. Then I learned that your schedule changed after you helped me. Diane stepped forward. Mr. Bennett, there has been a misunderstanding. The schedule was adjusted for operational reasons. Nia looked at Diane, but said nothing. Charles did not raise his voice. That is why I asked Mr. Pierce to review the records rather than rely on assumptions. Harold opened his folder. The scheduling records show that Miss Carter lost 16 hours the morning after the incident. Diane's face tightened. I am the manager. Scheduling is my responsibility. It is, Harold said. So is applying policy consistently. Diane looked toward Nia. She challenged management authority. Nia felt every eye turned toward her. She could have remained silent. Silence would have been safer. Instead, she spoke carefully. I asked which policy I had broken before signing a written warning. Harold nodded. There is no policy prohibiting an employee from using personal money to help a customer. Diane's expression hardened. She created a scene. Charles looked at Nia. Did you? Nia remembered the rain, the empty parking lot, and the quiet beep of the register. No, sir. I put $5 on pump 6. Charles turned back to Diane. Then perhaps the scene came later. No one answered. Morning sunlight passed through the front windows and fell across the counter. Nia noticed the $5 bill still resting there. 2 nights ago, that amount had been bus fare, lunch, cereal, and a choice. Now it seemed almost weightless. Charles gently pushed it closer to her. Please take it. Nia picked up the bill and folded it once. Thank you. No, Charles said. Thank you. Diane crossed her arms. Mr. Bennett, with respect, are we really changing employment decisions because a wealthy man happened to receive $5 from an employee? Charles's expression became serious. That is exactly the wrong lesson. He turned toward Nia. If I had been unemployed, would your decision have been different? No. If I had never returned. Nia thought about Marcus asking the same question. No, sir. Charles nodded. That is why I returned. He looked around the station, then back at Harold. I am not here to demand that anyone be fired. I am asking for a fair review of how employees are scheduled, disciplined, and treated. Diane looked surprised. Nia was surprised too. She had expected power to arrive loudly. Charles was using it differently. Harold closed his folder. The review begins today. Charles then turned to Nia. Mr. Pierce told me you work another job. Nia hesitated. Yes, sir. And that you are planning to attend college. I am trying to. What do you want to study? For the first time that morning, Nia answered without caution. Biology. Maybe public health later. Charles smiled. My company funds a scholarship and internship program with several community colleges in Georgia. Nia immediately shook her head. Sir, I did not give you $5 to get something back. I know. His answer came without hesitation. That is the only reason I am comfortable telling you about it. He handed her a simple card with the program office information. There is an application. There is an interview. No promises. You will have to earn your place. Nia looked down at the card. That sounded better to her than a miracle. It sounded like a door. Charles glanced at the clock above the register. I have taken enough of your work time. He started toward the exit, then stopped beside pump 6 visible through the window. One more thing, Miss Carter. Nia looked up. The night you helped me, I thought I had a transportation problem. His eyes moved briefly toward Diane, then returned to Nia. It turns out I needed a reminder about people. Then he walked outside into the clear morning, leaving Nia. beneath the fluorescent lights with $5 in one hand and an unopened door in the other. The black sedan disappeared onto the highway, but the silence it left behind remained inside the station. Nia stood near the counter with the program card in one hand and the returned $5 bill in the other. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then the coffee machine released a soft hiss, and the ordinary sounds of the morning returned. A customer entered to pay for fuel. Tyler went back to the stockroom. Harold Pierce reopened his folder. Diane walked into the office without looking at Nia. The world had not transformed simply because a billionaire had walked through the door. Nia was strangely grateful for that. She put the $5 bill inside her wallet and slipped the program card into the front pocket of her bag. Then she returned to the register. At 11:30, Harold asked to speak with her again. They sat in the small office while Diane worked outside. "Your weekend hours will be restored," he said. "You can work the original schedule if you want them." Nia thought about the biology textbook. "I want them." Harold nodded. "There will also be a formal review of disciplinary records and scheduling practices at this location." Nia looked through the office window. Diane was arranging candy bars without speaking to anyone. "What happens to her?" Harold closed the folder. "That depends on the review." Nia nodded. She did not feel the satisfaction she had imagined fairness might bring. Mostly, she felt tired. "Mr. Pierce, can I ask something?" "Of course." "Would this review be happening if the man I helped had not been Charles Bennett?" Harold did not answer immediately. His hesitation told her more than a quick response could have. "Probably not this quickly," he admitted. Nia looked down at her hands. "Then, that is part of the problem." Harold leaned back. "You are right." She looked up, surprised by the absence of an argument. "We will include that in the review." When Nia left the office, Diane was waiting near the coffee station. "You must feel very fortunate," she said quietly. Nia stopped. "I feel tired." "You know what I mean." "No, ma'am." "I do." "Not." Diane glanced toward Harold. "A billionaire appears, and suddenly everyone listens to you." Nia considered the words. "I was saying the same things before he came back." Diane looked away. "You think I am a terrible person. I think you treated me differently. That is not the same thing. It matters to the person receiving it." Diane's face tightened, but Nia did not continue. She walked back to the register because there was nothing else she needed to prove in that moment. At the end of her shift, Nia rode the bus home and placed the program card on the kitchen table. Evelyn read it carefully. Marcus leaned over her shoulder. "Is that from the Billionaire?" he asked. "It is from a scholarship program." "Same thing." "Not even close." Nia opened her old laptop. The battery only worked when the charging cable was held at a certain angle, so Marcus placed a thick dictionary beneath the cord to keep it still. Together, they opened the application website. The form was longer than Nia expected. Academic records, employment history, 2 recommendations, a personal statement, an interview if selected. Marcus frowned at the screen. "That is a lot of work." "Good." Nia began typing. "Why is that good?" "Because if I get in, I want to know I earned it." Over the next 4 days, she worked both jobs and completed the application after midnight. Evelyn helped her find old school records. A former science teacher agreed to write a recommendation. Nia rewrote her personal statement 6 times because every version sounded either too proud or too apologetic. On the 7th attempt, she stopped trying to sound impressive and wrote the truth. She wrote about wanting to study biology because illness and health had shaped too many decisions in families like hers. She wrote about watching people delay care because missing one shift could mean missing rent. She wrote that science mattered, but access mattered too. Then she submitted the application at 2:17 in the morning and closed the laptop. 3 weeks passed. Charles did not call. No black sedans returned. Life continued in bus schedules, grocery aisles, late shifts, and careful budgets. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Nia's phone rang while she was stacking canned soup at the grocery store. "May I speak with Nia Carter?" a woman asked. "This is she. I am calling from the Bennett Community Scholars Program. The selection committee has reviewed your application, and we would like to invite you for an interview." Nia gripped the phone more tightly. "Thank you. Yes, absolutely." The woman gave her the date and address. When the call ended, Nia stood between shelves of soup and beans, staring at nothing. Her manager walked past and asked if she was all right. Nia smiled. "I think a door just opened." But she also knew something important. An open door was not the same as being carried through it. The next step would be hers. The interview was scheduled for 9:30 on a Thursday morning in downtown Atlanta. Nia arrived at 9:12, wearing a navy blazer borrowed from her former science teacher and carrying a folder that Evelyn had checked 3 times before she left home. The Bennett Community Scholars Office occupied one floor of a glass building near Peachtree Street, but the reception area was quieter than Nia expected. No marble statues, no gold signs, just gray chairs, green plants, and framed photographs of students working in laboratories, clinics, warehouses, and community centers. A receptionist asked Nia to sit down. She watched other applicants arrive. One wore an expensive suit. Another carried a university portfolio thick with certificates. Nia looked at her own folder. High school transcript, work history, recommendation letters. Nothing extraordinary. At 9:28, a woman named Dr. Rebecca Lawson introduced herself and led Nia into a conference room where 3 committee members waited. Charles Bennett was not among them. Nia felt relieved. She wanted to know whether her application could stand without him in the room. The questions began simply. Why biology? Why community college? What problem did she hope to solve? Nia answered carefully at first, then forgot to be nervous when Dr. Lawson asked about healthcare access. My grandmother once delayed a doctor visit for 3 weeks because she was afraid of the bill, Nia said. My brother had asthma when he was younger, and I remember counting inhaler doses because we were worried about running out before payday. I want to understand the science, but I also want to understand why good science does not reach everyone equally. One committee member leaned forward. Your application says you work 2 jobs. How will you manage school? The same way I manage everything else. With a schedule, very little sleep, and help when I am smart enough to accept it. The room softened with quiet laughter. The final question came from Dr. Lawson. Tell us about a time you made a difficult decision without knowing whether anyone would reward you for it. Nia knew immediately what story they expected. She also knew she did not want $5 to become the only interesting thing about her. I can tell you about the gas station, she said, but I think the harder decision was applying here. Dr. Lawson raised an eyebrow. Why? Because helping someone for 5 minutes was easy. Believing I might deserve a different future has been harder. No one spoke for a moment. Nia continued. I know how to work. I know how to survive a difficult week. I know how to make $40 last longer than it should. But opportunities like this make you imagine something bigger, and that can be frightening when people around you depend on you. If I go back to school, I am not only choosing what I want. I am asking my family to believe the risk is worth it. Dr. Lawson nodded slowly. Thank you, Miss Carter. The interview ended at 10:17. Nia rode the elevator down alone. In the lobby, Charles stood near the front windows speaking with an older man. He saw her and excused himself. How did it go? He asked. I do not know. That usually means it went honestly. Nia smiled. You were not on the committee. No, did you arrange that? Yes. Charles placed his hands in his pockets. You told me without words that you did not want charity. I listened. Nia looked through the glass at the morning traffic. Thank you. Charles shook his head. Careful. We have already had this argument. She laughed softly. Then I will save it for later. His expression became more serious. The review at the station is complete. Nia waited. Several scheduling and disciplinary practices were found to be inconsistent. Mr. Pierce is implementing changes across all 32 locations. Written warnings will require a policy reference and secondary review. Schedule reductions following employee disputes will also be reviewed. And Diane? Charles asked the question with his eyes before Nia said it aloud. She is still employed, he answered. She received formal corrective action and management training. Mr. Pierce will monitor the location directly for the next 6 months. Nia released a breath she had not realized she was holding. You expected me to want her fired? I did not know what you wanted. Nia thought about Diane's words, the lost hours, and the casual kindness she had shown Tyler while making Nia fight for every inch of fairness. I wanted the unfair part to stop. Charles nodded. That was the goal. 2 weeks later, Nia received an email while riding the bus between jobs. She read the first sentence 3 times before understanding it. The committee had selected her for a 2-year scholarship covering tuition, books, and required laboratory fees. The program also offered a paid summer internship in community health logistics after her first year. Nia pressed one hand over her mouth and looked out the bus window as Atlanta moved past in the afternoon sun. She called Evelyn first. Her grandmother cried quietly. Marcus shouted so loudly that Nia had to hold the phone away from her ear. That evening, Nia went to the gas station for her scheduled shift. Diane was behind the counter. Their relationship had not become warm, but something had changed. Diane handed Nia the new schedule. Your school orientation is next month, correct? Yes, ma'am. Write the date down. I will make sure you are not scheduled. Nia looked at her, surprised. Diane did not apologize. Nia did not pretend the past had disappeared. But for the first time, fairness entered the room without needing a billionaire to stand beside it. Nia wrote the date on the calendar, put on her name tag, and began her shift. Outside, Pump 6 waited beneath the evening light, ordinary again, exactly as it should be. 4 months later, Nia sat in the second row of an introductory biology classroom with a sharpened pencil in her right hand and a new textbook open beneath the morning light. The room smelled faintly of dry erase markers and coffee. Around her, students compared schedules, searched for charging outlets, and complained about the price of parking. Nia listened with a quiet smile. For years, college had existed in her mind as a place she was always preparing to reach and never quite entering. Now a professor stood at the front of the room explaining the syllabus, and Nia's name was printed on the attendance list like she belonged there. She ran one finger along the edge of the textbook. Inside the front cover was a small white envelope. She had placed it there on the first morning of class and had not opened it since. When the lecture ended, students packed their bags and moved into the hallway. Nia remained seated for another moment. She opened the envelope and removed the $5 bill Charles had returned at the gas station. Behind it was a small card that had arrived from his office the week before classes began. The message was brief. You gave this away when it meant something. Remember what that says about you when the work gets difficult. Nia read the words once, then returned the card and bill to the envelope. She did not see the money as lucky. Luck had not carried her nearly 5 miles home after midnight. Luck had not written her application, completed her interview, or studied chemistry vocabulary at the kitchen table while Marcus watched basketball with the volume turned low. The $5 meant something else. It reminded her that character was measured before anyone important was watching. Her phone vibrated. A message from Evelyn asked how the first class had gone. Nia typed back that the professor had already assigned 40 pages of reading. Evelyn replied almost immediately. Good. You wanted an education. Nobody promised you a vacation. Nia laughed softly and put the phone away. Outside the classroom building, the Georgia sun warmed the concrete walkway. She had 3 hours before her. Afternoon class and a shift at the grocery store that evening. The scholarship had reduced the pressure, but Nia still worked. She wanted savings. She wanted to help at home. She also wanted to remember how to stand on her own feet while learning when it was acceptable to accept a hand. A week later, she began volunteering 4 hours every Saturday at a neighborhood health outreach program connected to her college. She checked families into free screening events, organized information packets, and helped older residents understand appointment forms. The work was simple, but she liked watching confusion leave someone's face when another person took the time to explain. One Saturday afternoon, Charles visited the program with members of the scholarship board. He wore no expensive-looking suit this time, only a light blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Nia saw him near the entrance and walked over. Your car have enough gas today? She asked. Charles smiled. Full tank. Good. I am on a student budget. He laughed, then looked around the busy community center. How is school? Hard. Good. My grandmother said the same thing. She sounds intelligent. She would agree with you. Charles asked about her classes, then listened while Nia described an idea she had for improving transportation information for patients who missed medical appointments because they could not reach clinics reliably. Charles did not offer money. He asked questions. Which neighborhoods? What data existed? Who had already studied the problem? Nia appreciated that more than an easy promise. Before leaving, Charles said, send me the proposal when you have evidence. Nia nodded. I will. Months earlier, she might have heard those words as pressure. Now she heard possibility. At the gas station, changes continued quietly. Harold Pierce introduced clearer scheduling rules across the region. Employees could request reviews of disciplinary warnings. Diane remained manager, but the sharp difference in how she treated Nia and Tyler gradually disappeared. One evening, Nia stopped by to buy coffee before studying. Diane was working behind the counter. "How are classes?" she asked. "Busy." Diane nodded. "You always were good at busy." It was not an apology, but it was the closest they had come to speaking without defensiveness. Nia paid for the coffee and turned toward the door. Then Diane said, "Nia?" She looked back. Diane hesitated. "I was wrong about that night." Nia waited. "About more than the $5, Diane added. The station became quiet. Nia could have made the moment heavier. Instead, she nodded once. "Thank you for saying it." Then she walked outside. Pump 6 stood beneath the white canopy lights. A young mother was filling an older car while two children slept in the back seat. A delivery driver bought coffee inside. Traffic moved steadily beyond the station. Nothing looked miraculous. Nia preferred it that way. She opened her textbook in the bus shelter and began reading while she waited for her ride home. Inside the cover, the envelope rested flat between the pages. $5. No longer bus fare. No longer lunch. No longer a rescue. Just a quiet reminder that kindness had been valuable before anyone returned to reward it, and that the strongest thing Nia had carried into her new life was not opportunity, money, or luck, but the person she had already chosen to be when nobody knew her name.